The Valari Union had always believed in peace. For thousands of years, they built cities of light on floating islands, shared knowledge among species, and solved every conflict through words, not war. To them, war was a thing of the past, something only primitive civilizations resorted to. But now, the stars burned again. The Karn Dominion had returned, a race of warlike beings covered in dark armor, moving through the galaxy like a plague. They came without warning, taking planets one after another, turning thriving colonies into wastelands. Their fleets were endless, their cruelty unmatched. Every world that resisted was destroyed completely. On the Valari capital world, Verital, the council gathered inside a grand chamber made of silver glass. Blue light from the twin suns filled the room as dozens of alien ambassadors argued, their voices trembling. The Karn destroyed the Drethi homeworld yesterday, one ambassador said, her eyes full of tears. 3 billion lives lost in hours. Our defense fleets couldn't stop them. We cannot fight them, said another, his voice hollow. Our weapons are decades behind. We are builders, not warriors. At the head of the table sat High Chancellor Talon, a tall, gentle being with silver skin and golden eyes. He looked around the room, seeing fear in every face. He knew what they were thinking. The Valari Union was finished. Talon stood slowly. Then we will ask for help, he said. Silence followed. From whom? One ambassador asked bitterly. We already called on the Varn Empire. They refused. The Council of Rings ignored us. Even the Technarch said this war is not theirs. Who is left? Talon raised his hand and activated the galactic map. A massive hologram appeared showing thousands of stars, most already marked with the red symbol of the Karn Dominion. Only a few sectors remained untouched. There is one region, Talon said softly, pointing toward a corner of the galaxy. A dark cluster of stars with a warning sign over it. The room grew tense. No, said one ambassador, not there. That sector is forbidden. It is labeled Deathworld Class 5, another added. No ships return from there. It's too dangerous. Only monsters could live on a world like that. Talon's golden eyes stayed fixed on the map. Perhaps, he said. But monsters may be what we need. The council murmured in shock. To contact a death world was madness. But as the room filled with despair, Talon pressed the command. A long-range transmission beacon activated, sending a plea for help into the unknown. It was simple. To any who can hear this, we are the Valari Union. We face extinction. The Karn Dominion destroys all we love. We offer alliance, knowledge, and friendship in return for aid. Please, if you can hear us, help us. The message went out into the dark. Days passed. Then weeks. There was no answer. The Valari worlds fell one after another. The Union began evacuating its outer colonies. Hope faded. Talon spent every night looking at the stars from the balcony of his office, wondering if anyone out there had heard. Then on the 13th night, his communication officer ran into the room, trembling. Chancellor, we received a signal. Talon turned sharply. From where? From the Deathworld sector, sir. Coordinates match the restricted zone, Sol system. Talon froze. No one had ever gotten a reply from a Deathworld. Play it, he ordered. A deep, rough voice came through the speakers. The words were clear, though the tone carried something powerful. A quiet strength. This is Commander Rian of United Earth Defense Council. We received your message. Send your envoy. We'll talk. The room went silent. The officer looked terrified. Sir, they sound different. Talon didn't respond for a moment. Then he whispered, Prepare the envoy ship. 2 days later, a small silver ship left Valari space carrying Talon and a few diplomats. As it entered hyperspace, Talon felt uncertainty twist in his chest. Stories about death worlds filled every child's mind. Worlds where storms could shatter metal, creatures could crush vehicles, and air itself could poison the weak. The journey lasted 6 days. When they dropped out of hyperspace, the view filled the screen, a blue planet surrounded by a white moon. Is that it? One diplomat whispered. That small world? Talon nodded. That is Earth. Their scanners struggled to process the readings. Oxygen levels were dangerously high. Temperatures swung wildly across continents. The planet had volcanoes, hurricanes, deserts, glaciers, all on the same surface. No civilized species should have survived there. Yet as the ship descended, they saw cities, huge, glittering cities filled with life. Machines flew through the sky. Towers touched the clouds. Oceans carried metal ships across stormy waters. It was chaotic, loud, and alive. This place, it shouldn't be possible, said the pilot softly. A voice came through their comms. Volari vessel, this is Earth Orbital Command. Welcome to the Sol system. Follow the beacon for landing clearance. Talon felt his heart race. They were really doing this. The ship landed in a large metal hangar surrounded by soldiers in dark gray armor. The humans stood tall, heavier built, scarred, and alert. They didn't smile, but their eyes were sharp, filled with purpose. A man stepped forward, tall, with short black hair and calm brown eyes. His uniform was marked with a single name tag, Rian. Welcome to Earth, he said simply. Talon bowed slightly. I am Chancellor Talon of the Volari Union. We are honored to be here. Ryan nodded. Let's talk. They sat inside a meeting room overlooking the planet. Talon explained everything. The Karn invasion, the destruction of their worlds, the desperate call for help. The humans listened silently. Not one interrupted. When Talon finished, there was a long pause. Ryan leaned back in his chair. You're asking us to fight a galactic war against an empire you couldn't stop, he said calmly. Talon lowered his head. Yes, we have no other hope. Ryan looked out the window where the blue planet shone below. The galaxy avoided us for centuries, he said quietly. They called us savages, didn't they? Talon hesitated. The records did warn of your world's dangers. Ryan smiled faintly, not kindly, but with understanding. They were right. Earth is dangerous. Our storms can kill. Our animals hunt each other every day. Even our own planet tries to destroy us, but that's why we survived. It's why we fight, he stood, his voice firm. We are Deathworlders because we had to be. You want help? Then understand what that means. Talon's golden eyes met his. And what does it mean, Commander? It means, Ryan said, that when we fight, we don't stop until it's over. The next day, Ryan took Talon to Earth's military command center. Massive screens displayed fleets assembling in orbit. Engineers loaded weapons, soldiers trained in gravity simulators, and orbital stations prepared for departure. Your request reached us at the right time, Ryan said. We've been preparing for years. Humanity's first interstellar fleet is ready to move. The Karn Dominion wants a war, they'll get one. Talon stared in awe. You are truly going to help us? Ryan nodded. We don't fight for conquest. We fight for the right to exist. And no tyrant has the right to erase life from the stars. As the Volari ship left Earth's orbit, Talon looked back at the blue world, realizing something deep in his heart. The galaxy had been wrong about Deathworlders. They weren't monsters. They were survivors, and now the survivors were coming. When Chancellor Talon returned to the Volari capital, he carried something the galaxy had not seen for centuries: hope. The Deathworlders had agreed to fight beside them. The Union Council was in shock. Ambassadors shouted over one another, unsure whether to cheer or panic. Are you certain, Chancellor? One asked, trembling. These humans, they come from a world marked uninhabitable. Talon nodded calmly. Yes, but they are not what we feared. They are strong, disciplined, and united. They offered help when no one else would. Some were still afraid. What if they turn on us after the war? Talon's voice was firm. Then we will deal with that when the time comes. For now, the Karn must be stopped, or there will be no tomorrow for anyone. After days of debate, the Union Council approved the alliance. A message was sent to Earth. The Volari Union accepts your offer. In reply, a single sentence came back from Commander Rian. Prepare your worlds. Humanity is coming. Within a month, Earth's fleet arrived in Volari space. They did not come with thousands of ships like the Karn, but with only 100 massive war cruisers, each black as night and armed with glowing energy lines that pulsed like veins. The Volari scientists watched in awe as these ships moved in perfect formation, faster and tighter than any fleet they had ever seen. The lead ship, UES Titan, carried Commander Rian and his soldiers. When they entered orbit above Verital, the entire planet stopped to look up. For the first time in generations, the Volari felt protected. When Ryan stepped onto Volari soil, he was greeted by Talon himself. You have come so fast, Talon said, still amazed. Rian nodded. When a friend calls for help, we move fast. Talon smiled faintly. Then may the stars guide your courage, Commander. The first mission began immediately. The planet Alien, One of the Valari outer colonies was under Karn control. The Karn had enslaved its people and turned the cities into factories for weapons. The Valari army had tried to retake it once but failed terribly. Now it was time for the humans to try. In the command room, a holographic map displayed alien surface, half covered in smoke and fire. "We will strike here," Ryan said, pointing to the central fortress. "That's their command hub. Take it down and the rest falls apart." The Valari generals looked uncertain. "But the Karn have planetary shields and ground cannons. We cannot penetrate them." Ryan only smiled slightly. "You can't, but we can." He turned to his soldiers, all standing in dark armor with the symbol of Earth on their shoulders. "We go in at dawn. Remember, these people called for help. We are the answer." The humans saluted silently, their eyes steady and fearless. The next day, the invasion began. The UES Titan entered low orbit, and hundreds of human dropships launched at once, burning through aliens' atmosphere like falling stars. The Karn anti-air guns opened fire, but the humans dodged with impossible precision, twisting through explosions and storms. When the first human soldiers landed, they did not hesitate. They charged into the burning streets, moving in small teams, their rifles glowing with blue plasma. The Karn troops, huge armored beasts, fired heavy cannons that shattered walls, but the humans kept advancing. Talon watched the battle through the live feed from orbit, unable to look away. He saw humans running straight into enemy fire, using quick cover movements, their voices calm even under chaos. "Squad Alpha, flank left. Squad Bravo, cover civilians. Push forward, now don't give them space." Their coordination was perfect. Within hours, the Karn front lines began to collapse. The humans fought not like soldiers, but like survivors, using everything around them as a weapon. They climbed walls, hijacked enemy vehicles, and used smoke to blind heavy gunners. The Valari army, watching from orbit, could not believe it. "These humans fight like they've done this forever," one officer whispered. "They have," Talon replied quietly, "on their own world." By nightfall, the human forces reached the Karn fortress. The sky burned orange from the fires. Commander Ryan led the final charge himself. Explosions rocked the ground as he and his troops stormed the gates. The Karn defenders roared in fury, but Ryan didn't slow down. "Move," he shouted. "Clear the walls." His voice cut through the chaos like thunder. Every order was simple, clear, and followed instantly. The humans moved with purpose, their energy rifles cutting down armored enemies with precise bursts. Inside the fortress, Ryan planted the Earth flag beside the Union banner. "This world is free again," he said through the comms. The message spread across Alien, then across the Union's remaining worlds. Cheers erupted everywhere. For the first time, the Karn had been pushed back. The Valari civilians, freed from the fortress, came out to see their saviors. Many stared in wonder. These Deathworlders were taller, rougher, and their armor was scarred from countless battles. Yet when a small Valari child ran to Ryan, thanking him, the human soldier knelt and smiled gently. "We only did what was right," Ryan said. News of aliens' liberation spread fast. Other species across the galaxy began to take notice. The humans, the so-called monsters from the Death World, had done what no one else dared. In hidden corners of the galaxy, alien leaders watched in silence. Some were afraid. Others felt hope for the first time in decades. "Who are these people?" asked one observer from the distant Tauran Republic. "Humans," another replied. "They come from the world called Earth. They are dangerous." "Yes," said the other, "but maybe danger is what we need." Meanwhile, aboard the UES Titan, Ryan and Talon stood side by side, looking at the stars. Talon spoke first. "Your soldiers, they don't fight like any army I've ever seen. They don't fear death." Ryan's expression was calm. "Fear never leaves us, Chancellor. We just learn to fight with it. On Earth, everything wants to kill you, storms, beasts, disease. We had to adapt. That's how we became strong." Talon looked thoughtful. "And yet your world also made you kind. You saved our children even while under fire." Ryan smiled slightly. "That's the other thing our world taught us. We protect what we can because life is too hard to waste." The Valari leader nodded slowly. "Perhaps the galaxy misjudged you." Ryan turned to face him. "The galaxy feared us because it didn't understand us. But now it will." As the human fleet prepared for its next campaign, Talon received countless messages from other systems. Alien governments who had once ignored their pleas now sent envoys. asking to join the alliance. The humans had changed everything. The Valari began calling them the Deathworlders of Hope. In every tavern, market, and school, people spoke their name with respect. Children drew pictures of human soldiers with glowing helmets and called them the Guardians of Stars. The Karn Dominion, however, was furious. Their warlords could not understand how a small, primitive species had defeated their armies. They called for vengeance and began building larger fleets to crush the humans. But Ryan was already planning. He stood before his officers in the Titan's command center, looking at the map of the galaxy. Red zones marked Karn territory, spreading like a disease. "They think fear will stop us," Ryan said. "They're wrong. We've lived with fear since the dawn of our kind. We learned to master it. Now we'll teach them what it means to face humanity." His soldiers saluted in silence. Down on Verital, Talon watched as the stars glittered brighter than ever. Hope had returned, but he knew the war was far from over. Still, for the first time, the Valari Union didn't tremble at the sound of the Karn's name. They had allies now, Deathworlders who walked through storms, who didn't run from battle, and who carried the unbreakable spirit of survival. Talon whispered to himself as he looked up at the night sky. Maybe the galaxy was waiting for them all along. The victory on Alien changed everything. For the first time, the galaxy whispered about resistance. The humans had done what no one believed possible. They had beaten the Karn Dominion in open battle. Across Valari space, people celebrated. The streets of Verital were filled with lights, music, and banners. Children wore badges with the image of Earth's flag, and older citizens raised their voices in hope. But Commander Rian knew the truth. This was only the beginning. The Karn Dominion would never forgive such humiliation. The destruction of their fortress on Alien had enraged them. Their fleets were now gathering in massive numbers, preparing to crush anyone who stood with humanity. Rian stood inside the UES Titan's strategy chamber, surrounded by holographic maps of nearby systems. Red lines showed the Karn's approach, a storm of warships moving fast. "They're coming for us," said Lieutenant Mara, one of Ryan's senior officers. Ryan nodded. "Good. Then we won't have to waste time finding them." Talon, standing beside him, frowned slightly. "Commander, your confidence is admirable, but our forces are small. Even with your fleet, we are outnumbered 5-1. Rian looked at the hologram again. "Numbers don't win wars, Chancellor. Determination and creativity do." He tapped the display, highlighting a barren world between Valari and Karn space, Narath 9. "We'll meet them here." Talon blinked. "That planet is a wasteland. No air, no water, no life. Why there?" "Because it's perfect for an ambush," Ryan replied. "And because they'll never expect it." The next week was spent in preparation. Human and Valari engineers worked side by side, building sensor grids and defense outposts on Narath 9. The planet's surface was rough and filled with canyons, an ideal place to hide weapons. Valari scientists marveled at human engineering. They built bunkers deep into the planet's crust, designed missile systems that could fire through storms, and positioned drones to confuse enemy radar. Mara looked over the progress. "It's strange," she said, smiling slightly. "Working with aliens doesn't feel so different after all." Talon, watching the humans work tirelessly without rest, replied, "You fight like you build and with full heart." Ryan's orders were clear. "We make this world our shield, and when the Karn come, we make them regret it." Days later, the alarm sounded. A scout ship reported massive energy signatures. The Karn fleet had arrived. Dozens of colossal warships exited hyperspace, their black hulls glowing with crimson light. Their leader, Warlord Kreth, stood aboard his flagship, snarling as he saw Narath 9 on his screens. "So this is where the Deathworlders hide," he growled. "End them. Burn their new allies to dust." The Karn fleet advanced, confident and unstoppable, but they didn't know what awaited them below. On the surface, Ryan stood at the command bunker, the ground shaking as the first enemy blasts struck the planet. Explosions lit up the dark sky. "Shields holding at 80%, shouted a Valari officer. "Let them come closer," Rian said calmly. "We want them in range." Human soldiers were already in position, hiding inside deep trenches and camouflaged bunkers. Drones flew above the canyons, sending false readings to confuse the Karn sensors. When the enemy fleet entered the upper atmosphere, Ryan gave the order, "Fire." A roar shook the planet. Hidden railguns rose from the ground and fired in perfect sequence. Each shot pierced through the Karn's energy shields, tearing holes in their ships. Plasma missiles followed, streaking upward like lightning. The Karn ships began exploding one by one. "What is this?" Warlord Kreth shouted from his flagship. "How are they hitting us from below?" "Unknown energy readings, my lord," replied his officer.
"They're using terrain to hide power signatures."
Kreth slammed his fist. "Then we'll destroy the terrain."
Level the planet.
Ryan's eyes flickered as he saw the enemy ships changing formation. "They're preparing bombardment," he said. "All units, underground positions now." Within seconds, the humans and Volari took cover inside their bunkers. The Karn fleet unleashed a rain of plasma fire that melted rock and turned valleys into rivers of molten lava. The surface shook violently. For a few minutes, the world looked like it was dying. Then the bombardment stopped. The Karn believed everything below was destroyed. But deep underground, Ryan stood up, brushing dust from his armor. "Everyone intact?" Mara nodded. "Minimal casualties, Commander." Ryan smiled faintly. "Then let's give them a surprise." Dozens of human dropships launched from underground tunnels, rising through smoke and fire like ghosts. They broke through the atmosphere and shot straight toward the Karn fleet. Inside one of the dropships, Sergeant Cole grinned under his helmet. Time to show them what Earth soldiers can do. As they reached the enemy line, the humans didn't slow down. They crashed onto Karn ships, cutting through hulls with plasma drills and storming the decks. Hand-to-hand combat broke out across the fleet. The Karn were huge and armored, but the humans were faster, using teamwork and precise strikes. Ryan led the attack on the flagship himself. He and his squad boarded through a breach in the hull, moving quietly through the smoke-filled corridors. "Keep formation," he said. "Target their command center." Inside, Warlord Kreth waited, towering over them in heavy armor. His voice thundered, "So the Deathworlders come to die." Ryan aimed his rifle. "No, we came to remind you, and we fight back." The two clashed in a violent storm of energy and sparks. Kreth swung his plasma blade with incredible force, but Ryan dodged, firing controlled bursts that cracked the enemy's armor. The fight lasted minutes that felt like hours. Finally, Ryan managed to hit the control console beside Kreth. The explosion threw the Karn leader backward into a power core. Sparks erupted and Kreth roared in pain. Ryan stepped closer, his voice calm. "This is for every world you burned." He pressed the detonator on his wrist. The charges planted across the ship went off at once. From space, the Volari fleet saw the Karn flagship explode in a brilliant light. The shockwave rippled through the battle zone, and the remaining Karn ships began to retreat. Cheers erupted across all channels. "Commander, the Karn are retreating," shouted Mara. Ryan's voice came through the comms, steady but tired. "Let them run. We've made our point." When the Titan picked up the surviving human squads, the soldiers were exhausted but victorious. Ryan stood at the viewport, watching debris drift through space. Talon appeared beside him, his golden eyes full of emotion. "You did it again, Commander." "You stopped them." Ryan shook his head. "Not yet. We hurt them. But they'll come back stronger." Talon sighed. "Then we'll be ready." Ryan looked out at the stars. "That's the spirit, Chancellor. Welcome to the Deathworld mindset." The Battle of Nereth 9 became known as the First Clash, the moment when the galaxy truly understood what humans were capable of. Stories spread fast. Everywhere, people spoke of the Deathworlders who had faced impossible odds and won. Even the Karn soldiers began to whisper about them. Stories of humans walking through fire, of commanders who fought like legends. Some even refused to fight again, fearing the Earthborn ghosts. In the Volari capital, the council named Ryan and his soldiers defenders of the Union. Statues of humans and Volari standing side by side were raised in cities, but Ryan didn't care for titles. He only cared that the civilians were safe. When Mara asked him what humanity's next move would be, he answered simply, "We keep going. The Karn think we're just another race to conquer. Let's show them what it means to challenge survivors from a death world." As the Titan prepared for its next mission, Talon stood by the window, watching the fleet gather once again. The humans were not just warriors, they were symbols. Their courage had reignited the galaxy's spirit. He whispered softly to himself. When the galaxy pleaded for allies, it found more than friends. It found Deathworlders. When dawn came over the battlefield on Vega Prime, it was not the peaceful kind of dawn one might see on a calm world. The sky burned orange and gray, smoke from thousands of destroyed drones hanging like a shroud over the valley. Human ships floated high above the clouds, forming a shield wall between the planet and the incoming Zorath armada. For the first time in decades, the United Defense Fleet of humanity was fighting side by side with the Union worlds. Talon stood at the command deck, his face pale with tension. He had seen many battles before, but nothing like this. Around him, alien officers worked nervously, whispering in low voices. They still couldn't believe what humans were capable of. Their reputation as Deathworlders, beings born on a world so harsh that everything tried to kill them, had spread fast since the first engagement. On the other side of the room, Commander Mason stood with his arms crossed. His uniform was marked with dust and burns, but his eyes were sharp, focused. "Status?" he asked in his deep voice. Talon turned to him. "The Zorath fleet is approaching fast. Our long-range sensors show more than 200 warships. If they break through the orbital line, we'll lose the planet." Mason nodded as if he had expected worse. "Then we make sure they don't." A quiet hush spread across the bridge. Mason's words weren't loud or dramatic, but they carried weight. The kind of confidence that only came from someone who had faced death and won before. He wasn't from a world of comfort or safety. He was a Deathworlder, one of the humans who lived every day fighting nature itself. In orbit, the human flagship Iron Valor led the charge. Captain Elena Rivera stood before the massive viewing window, her eyes scanning the endless dark. "Fire control, ready torpedoes. When they enter range, unleash hell." Her crew responded instantly. No hesitation, no fear. The humans didn't wait for the enemy to strike first. They met danger head-on. The Zorath fleet appeared moments later, shimmering silver ships shaped like blades. Their communication channels opened, and a deep mechanical voice echoed across frequencies. "Surrender the Deathworlders. They are a threat to galactic order." Elena smiled coldly. "Tell them," she said. "They'll have to go through Earth first." The transmission cut off, and a heartbeat later, war erupted. From the ground below, Talon and Mason watched the orbital battle through holographic feeds. Blue lines marked friendly ships, red showed enemies. Within minutes, the screen was filled with motion, explosions blooming like deadly stars. "Your ships are engaging them directly?" Talon said, unable to hide his shock. "That's suicide. No fleet has ever charged a Zorath line before." Mason looked at him calmly. "You don't win by hiding. You win by making them fear you." The alien commander didn't respond, but deep down he understood. The humans didn't fight with fear. They fought with will. Every movement, every action was precise, driven not by instinct but by purpose. As the space battle raged, the ground war began. Zorath dropships broke through the atmosphere, sending waves of mechanical soldiers toward Vega Prime's defensive lines. The aliens of the Union trembled as the dark machines descended like rain, covering the horizon. "Hold the line," shouted General Torak, the reptilian commander of the Vega defense. But panic spread quickly. His troops had never faced such overwhelming force. Then, through the smoke, the humans arrived. Dozens of armored transports roared across the field. Their heavy treads crushed the earth, and towering figures in black armor leapt out. Human marines carrying weapons that glowed with electric light. Mason himself stood among them, his rifle steady as he looked over the advancing horde. He raised his hand. "Focus fire. No one breaks formation." The first volley of human plasma tore through the enemy lines. Drones exploded one after another, falling in smoking heaps. The air filled with noise, metal screaming, weapons roaring. Yet even as the Zorath machines adapted, the humans didn't retreat. They moved forward. For every fallen comrade, 2 more humans pressed on. The Union soldiers, inspired by their courage, joined the fight. Talon found himself firing beside a human marine, his claws trembling as he tried to keep pace. "How are you so calm?" Talon shouted over the gunfire. The marine laughed under his helmet. "Calm? Nah, we're just used to worse." Talon didn't understand what worse could possibly mean, until he saw Mason grab a disabled drone, rip out its power core, and use it as an explosive. The blast cleared a path through the line, and Mason waved his team forward. Hours passed like minutes. The sky darkened again, filled with fire and ash. Reports came from the orbit. Half of the Zorath fleet destroyed, the rest retreating. But the cost was high. Many human ships had been damaged. Vega's surface was scarred. Mason limped through the ruins of the battlefield, his armor dented, his face streaked with dirt. Talon approached him carefully. You actually did it. The Zorath are pulling back. Mason glanced up at the sky where faint streaks of retreating ships still burned through the atmosphere. No, he said softly. They'll be back. And next time they'll bring everything they have. Talon looked around at the exhausted soldiers, human and alien alike. Then how can we possibly stop them? Mason's expression hardened. By uniting. Humanity can't fight alone. Neither can your union, but together, he paused, his gaze fierce and full of belief. Together, we can make them regret ever coming here. Back in orbit, Captain Rivera received the final report. Ground secured. Enemy retreat confirmed. She leaned back in her chair, relief flickering across her face. Get me Commander Mason. It's time to plan the next move. When Mason's image appeared on the screen, both of them looked tired and but alive. You realize, Rivera said. The rest of the galaxy just watched us turn a lost cause into a victory. Mason nodded. Good. Let them see what humans can do. Rivera smiled faintly. You think they'll trust us now? He shrugged. Maybe not. But they'll respect us, and that's the first step. Far away in the dark heart of the Zorath Empire, their supreme commander watched the recordings from Vega Prime. He saw humans walking through explosions, carrying wounded aliens, refusing to surrender even when surrounded. He turned to his advisors, his mechanical eyes narrowing. They are not like the others, he said. They are from the death world, and they will not kneel. The others looked uneasy. For centuries, the Zorath had ruled through fear, but now, a new kind of fear spread among them, one that came not from power but from defiance. As night fell again over Vega Prime, Talon stood outside the ruined command post. He watched humans and aliens working side by side, rebuilding defenses, sharing supplies, even laughing together despite the loss. He remembered the day his people had begged the galaxy for help, and how no one had come. Until the humans did. And now he finally understood why the word Deathworlder carried such weight. It wasn't just because humans came from a world of danger. It was because they had learned to live with it, to turn struggle into strength. Talon looked up at the sky where distant stars glimmered faintly through the smoke. Maybe, he whispered, this is what hope looks like. Mason joined him, his gaze fixed on the horizon. Hope's a good start, he said quietly. But tomorrow we build something stronger. The wind blew softly through the valley, carrying with it the scent of burned earth and victory, the scent of a new alliance. And for the first time in ages, the galaxy was changing because humanity, the Deathworlders, had arrived. For centuries, civilizations had lived in fear of the Karn Dominion and the Zorath Empire. Entire worlds had been burned, fleets destroyed, and hope itself seemed lost. But now there was a new force up of humanity, the Deathworlders, who had walked through storms, survived beasts, and turned their struggles into strength. Commander Mason stood on the bridge of the UES Titan, watching the last Karn warships retreat beyond the outer system. Beside him, Valari Admiral Talon and a small council of allied leaders observed the communication screens, showing a network of freed planets and victorious fleets. Is it finally over? Asked Talon softly. Mason shook his head slowly. Not yet, but we've given them something they've never seen before, a reason to doubt their own power. Across the galaxy, the message spread quickly. Reports of human-led victories had traveled faster than any warship. Fleets that had once hidden in fear now took courage from the Deathworlders' example. Alien species began to rebuild and fight for themselves, inspired by humans' courage and discipline. Even the Karn and Zorath empires began to retreat, forced to regroup. For the first time, no one dared declare victory over humanity. On the ground, Vega Prime became a symbol of resilience. Human soldiers worked side by side with alien allies to repair cities, treat the wounded, and restore order. Humans who had stormed the battlefield only days ago were now teaching alien soldiers advanced tactics and training them in survival techniques learned from harsh worlds back home. Lieutenant Mara moved through the medical tents, helping Valari healers treat those injured in the fight. She paused for a moment as a small Valari child held her hand. Thank you, the child said, eyes wide. Mara smiled gently. We only did what we had to do. But she knew better. Humans didn't fight because it was their duty. They fought because they understood what it meant to lose everything. Their courage wasn't born of pride, it was born of survival. In orbit, the final fleets assembled for what many called the Battle for the Stars. The remaining Karn and Zorath forces were regrouping for one final counterattack. Commander Mason reviewed the strategies with Admiral Talon and Captain Rivera. "The enemy will use everything they have," Mason said, voice steady. "World destroyers, orbital bombardments, advanced warships. But we're ready," Talon frowned. "You make it sound so simple, Commander. How can a handful of humans and our allies possibly face the full might of two empires?" Mason looked at him with calm determination. "It's not about numbers, Chancellor. It's about purpose. Every human you see here knows why we fight. They aren't afraid to die because they understand what they're protecting. Life itself. And the galaxy will follow that example." Captain Rivera nodded. "We've trained our allies. They'll fight beside us. They won't run." Talon realized then that this was the true power of humanity. Not their weapons or their ships or even their strength. It was their spirit. The final battle began over the system of Letherion, a strategic gateway to countless other star systems. The Karn and Zorath fleets arrived in massive numbers, black and red ships blotting out the stars. They expected an easy victory, confident that the so-called Deathworlders would be crushed like every other species before them. Instead, they were met with coordinated precision. Human warships moved in perfect formation, flanking enemy lines. Valari ships fired energy beams in synchronized waves. Alien allies launched swarms of drones to disable enemy systems. From the command bridge of the UES Titan, Mason watched the battle unfold like a deadly dance. "Focus on the flagships first," he ordered. "Break their leadership. Everything else will follow." On the surface of Letherion's largest moon, human and alien soldiers worked together to disable planetary defense systems. Explosions shook the craters and fire and smoke filled the air. Yet humans moved calmly, using terrain and cover to outmaneuver the enemy. Every decision was precise, every movement coordinated. Lieutenant Mara led a group of Valari soldiers through a canyon to intercept an enemy reinforcement unit. "Stay close," she shouted. "Watch each other's backs." The Valari were nervous, unaccustomed to such close combat tactics, but under Mara's leadership they adapted quickly. Within minutes they had neutralized the enemy squad and secured the area. Mara took a deep breath. This is how humans fight," she whispered to herself. Above Letherion, the orbital engagement reached its peak. The human fleet used tactics unknown to the enemy, feints, decoys, and daring strikes at vulnerable points. The Karn and Zorath ships, despite their advanced technology, began to falter. Captain Rivera directed her flagship with skill, dodging orbital missiles and returning fire with railguns that tore through enemy armor. "Keep pushing forward," she shouted. "Every second counts." Mason coordinated ground and orbital forces seamlessly, showing why humans had survived on Deathworlds for millennia. Every obstacle was anticipated, every enemy move countered. Hours later, the enemy flagship of the Karn Empire exploded in a brilliant flash, throwing a shockwave across the battlefield. The remaining forces panicked. Without their leader, cohesion collapsed. Mason saw the moment and gave a single order: "Pursue. Do not let them regroup." The Deathworlders did not stop. They chased the fleeing ships into hyperspace, cutting off escape routes. Every human captain knew that hesitation could allow the enemy to recover. But humans never hesitated. They moved forward, always forward. The galaxy watched, stunned. No one had ever seen such relentless coordination, such discipline, or such courage. When the battle ended, the casualties were counted. Thousands of Karn and Zorath ships had been destroyed. Countless lives had been freed. Entire star systems were no longer under the shadow of tyranny. The Allies cheered. Valari, humans, and other species embraced one another, tears in their eyes. Even Talon, normally composed, felt his heart swell. Commander Mason stood quietly looking at the stars. "It's done," he said. Captain Rivera laughed softly. "For now. But they'll be back someday." Mason shook his head with a faint smile. "Then we'll be ready. Humanity doesn't give up. Neither should anyone who stands with us." In the following weeks, the galaxy began to rebuild. The Valari Union restored its cities. Other species reclaimed their homes. and Earth's fleet remained on alert, not to conquer, but to protect. Talon addressed a gathering of allied leaders on Verital. We called for help when all others turned away, and what we received were not just allies. We received Deathworlders. Their courage, their ingenuity, and their determination saved us all. The galaxy will remember this day forever. The crowd erupted in applause. Yet Talon's eyes were fixed on Mason and the human soldiers standing in the back. They had done more than fight. They had inspired hope. Mason stepped forward. "We didn't do this for glory," he said. "We did it because it was right. Because life is worth protecting. And because when one species cries for help, the rest of the galaxy should answer, and if they can." The audience fell silent. Even Talon, a being wise and patient, understood the truth in his words. Months later, a monument was erected on Earth and mirrored in key Valari cities. A towering statue of a human soldier holding a Valari child, a symbol of hope and unity. Inscribed at the base were the words, "To the people of the Death World who came when all others turned away." Children played near the monument, unaware of the horrors that had been faced. Elders stood quietly, remembering those lost but honoring those who had fought. The story of humanity's arrival spread across the galaxy not as myth, but as fact. The galaxy had been saved by species who were underestimated, feared, and finally understood. Talon stood once more under the stars, thinking of the message that had started it all. The plea for allies. Humanity had answered. He whispered almost to himself, "The galaxy once doubted you, but now it knows." When the Valari pleaded for help, it received more than soldiers. It received the spirit of survival itself. Mason, standing beside him, looked up at the same stars. "We only did what anyone should do," he said simply. "Protect those who need it." But the galaxy knew the truth. Humans were not just protectors, and they were Deathworlders, the guardians of hope, and a force that would shape the universe for generations to come. And as the stars shone over the rebuilt worlds, every civilization whispered the same name with respect and awe: humanity.